we're going to touch base tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, and other honorable mentions like Perplexity, Copilot, Notebook LM, and a few others. Finally, we're getting into the use cases and LLM. So now let's go ahead and start with our first LLM. Hey guys, so for our first tool, we're going to talk about ChatGPT, which is the one that is being used by, I think, the majority of the people. And a little bit about ChatGPT is that most of the people are using it just for general use. So few people are using it for business, or they're using it in an advanced level. So most of them are using it more for their personal use cases, because ChatGPT is really good at that sort of personal level. It's not really, I mean, there are better tools, I think, for research and other things, but ChatGPT is very good for just conversational things. So just to kind of give you a quick overview of ChatGPT, this is kind of how you access it. Once you go to chatgpt.com, you create your own account. This is the first thing you will see. And just a quick overview. So for instance, when you go to the left side, you will think like there's a few models here that you can use. You can use the Instack model, you can use the thinking model. Then there's the legacy models that are the previous ones if you really like one. Or there's also kind of, you go to plus here, there's a deep research that you can do too, which start thinking more. And there's a lot more things you can do. You can add files, you can add photos, you can create images, you can do shopping research, you can use the web search. Also, you have the study learn, you have agent mode, you have add sources, canvas, quizzes. So you have a lot of things you can do. Another great thing that I really like about it is you have the dictate, which is pretty much just creating a transcript of what you're saying. So let's say, ChatGPT, I'm recording a video right now. Can you give me a transcript of this? Now, you don't have to tell it to give you a transcript. It's just gonna kind of automatically create create like a text of what you're saying. So that's very useful. This one here is actually you going in a conversation with ChatGPT. So I'm not gonna do this right now because this was something that maybe we'll look into the masterclass. But these are the two things that I really like. And whenever you're using your phone, it's great for you to have that conversational experience with it. Or when you're just kind of trying to grab ideas, it's great to start dictating these things here. So that's the overview on this chat ad here. Yeah, and then here you have the new chat, of course. Then here you'll have the search chat, which is pretty much just searching any previous chat that you want. Like if you were talking about something specifically when it comes to a report on RFI, you can just type here RFI and it will start looking at those things. So just think about it as a search tool. Then here you have a specifically, you want to talk about images. So it's great as far as like creating a specific style. You want to start with a specific style. So you want a specific thing that you have in your mind. That's something you can do. Now, we'll go in depth more about how to use ChatGPT for images, and if it's even one that you should consider based on comparing to other tools out there. But you have the opportunity to create images. Something great that I feel specifically for architects is that now you have the connection with Photoshop. So you can actually do the edits in Photoshop. You can say add Photoshop blur the background and things like that. So whenever you're creating with images, having that connection with a Photoshop could save you that part of you having to save that image and creating like a different thing in specifically Photoshop. So that's a great connection it has. And it has a lot more connections, but one specifically for architecture we can use is Adobe. It has other productivity and lifestyle ones here. Productivity here, you have other ones here. Yeah, I mean, something you can use is Adobe, Acrobat, Adobe Photoshop. So I think these are the ones that most architects would normally be using. You'll have Dropbox here, so you can connect that if you have a Dropbox account. You have Gusto, you have Google Drive, you can connect it to your Google Calendar, Gmail. So it's great with that. So eventually in the masterclass, we'll go through some connections that you can be using this, and then that's when you start leveraging the agentic mode of ChatGPT. Also here, it has deep research has its own module here, so you can either use deep research right here, or you can use it in the new chat right by coming here and just going to the deep research tag here. But the great thing is like here you will kind of organize. Let me make myself a little smaller here. The great thing you can organize the topics you've been talking about. So it will just be the topics that you've been having that deep research. As previously said, you can connect different connectors here. You can kind of give it specific sites that you want to utilize. Yeah, so deep research is a very good tool that you can do whenever you really want to analyze something. You have the codex here that we're not going to see because that's mostly for like programmers and engineers and things like that. So that's not something that we will be utilizing specifically for architecture as of right now. And then here you have the option to create custom agents, right? So there's the difference between GPTs, and we're going to talk more in depth whenever we go to the specific masterclass of ChatGPT. But just think about it like whenever you're creating these custom agents or custom apps for you, there's ways to create those in GPTs and projects. And the way I like to kind of divide those is like whenever you are doing just something for you that you know that you're going to be utilizing often, but you're not necessarily going to be sharing it with the rest of the office as far as you know, background, then that's something maybe you can just do it in projects because that's just for you, right? If it's just creating a specific agent for a specific project, and then maybe once you have tested a few times and you know it's helpful for you, and in your maybe in your company, in your firm, they're like, hey, we really like this workflow that you're utilizing. We want to use it as a company. Then you can bring that project and just copy that, let's call it backend prompt that you have, and then turn it into a GPT because that's something you can actually be sharing with your whole firm. So the rule of thumb, I think like projects is something that you want to use just for you. And then GPTs are something that you want to be sharing with an office or a firm environment. But generally speaking, they work the same way. And we'll look in depth more into the masterclass of ChatGPT, which will come in the later modules. Here you have your chats. So here's more like a history of your chats that you kind of want to go through if you want to kind of find something, and you can always use the search chats if you have lots of them and you kind of want to search by keywords. Great. Then after that, you will have, and again, you will go very in depth into this, but you can, then you have the custom plans. So what I would suggest for companies is just to kind of get that $30 a month, just because it will not be sharing your information, and you can actually be sharing the team accounts with GPTs and things like that. So it expedites your workflows if you're working as a team. And then you can also, again, we will go more in depth, but then you can also give it a personalization. You have settings where you can opt to share out of the data. If you're using the Plus account like me, I'm able to opt out to be training it with my information. And that's and the last overview with ChatGPT is like you can create groups where, for instance, where it's your friends or your colleagues or your people in the firm plus ChatGPT. So you can start asking questions, to generate reports, and then the other person in your team can actually look at those things too. Then this one here, the turn on temporary chat, is more like utilizing it more in like incognito mode, right? So which I think it's pretty fun. Like you don't want anybody to see a chat or something like that. You can use it as a temporary chat. ChatGPT is one of the best ones out there, and one that you should definitely consider. And with that being said, let's go to the next tool.
Emma, come check this out.
Okay, so now we're gonna go to the second tool, and this one here is Gemini, and this is one of my personal favorites, and it's because of all the connections and integrations that it's building, right? Like you have Gemini, it's pretty much an LM from Google, and Google has already integrations with Gmail, calendar. It has a lot more tools that are free that you don't know in the backend, like Notebook LM, and just the connectivity and how seamless it could be has so much potential, and that's why it's one of my favorite tools. And it also has a lot of versatility. And I'll show you right now what I mean by that. So just a little bit about about Gemini. Sorry. It works a little bit like the ChatGPT UI here, where we see you start with a chat box here that you can put your prompt. You have the tools here. The great thing about Gemini, and I think why it has become so popular in architecture, is because of Nano Banana and Nano Banana Pro. Image-wise, in my opinion, is one of the best ones out there just because of the control and consistency. I still think there's other tools that might be better for ideation, but when it comes to rendering, I don't see right now there's better tools than Nano Banana Pro specifically for rendering stuff for buildings mainly. So yeah, so that's why it has become so popular. You still have the deep research tool, kind of like a little bit like what we talk about ChatGPT. The great thing about this one here is like you can create videos seamlessly. You can create even music for it. You want to kind of do like a nice animation to it. So everything is sort of integrated together. You have a guided learning part of it. Something very experimental is your personal intelligence, where it pretty much learns everything about you, kind of like what the other LLMs have in the background, but it's a more personalized version where it will help you actually suggest things. So that's it for that part. You can also, the great thing it has a little hack that I learned, and you will kind of know this once we kind of go into the masterclass. You kind of connect it directly to Notebook LM. And so you work a lot with Notebook LM. You can integrate it and you can bring the files from Notebook LM directly into here, and it's very seamlessly. So that works really good. You can integrate with your photos and images. So if you have like a site visit or something, you can just integrate it here and automatically bring images here to the text stuff. You can upload images. If you work a lot with Google Drive and things like that, you can also integrate with Google Drive and automatically upload images or documents directly from your Google Drive. So if you are in the Google ecosystem when it comes to Gmail, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Drives, then this is probably one of the best tools you can use. And this is something that you're going to use daily. Just a little bit like, let me make myself a little smaller here. So just a little bit like what we talked with ChatGPT, you still have like thinking mode. You still have the fast mode. You have the thinking mode, which is probably going to use most of the time. If you're going to use Nano Banana Pro, you're probably going to keep it in thinking mode. And then you have the Pro advanced mode here, which is a little bit like the deep research. You do have the deep research one here, but that's more like a model if you want to do more like coding and things like that. And just like ChatGPT, you have the dictation mode, right? So where you will tell like, hey, can you listen to me and can you write what I'm saying? Yeah, so it's pretty much like a dictation mode, something that they still need to work on a little bit. And that's why ChatGPT, I think, has become a little bit better for just personal things. It's just the chat, right? Like if you just think about it, it has the microphone, but it doesn't have that chat part here. And when you're on a phone and you just want to chat with an LLM as far as to give you ideas and ideation, ChatGPT is a little easier for that rather than here because you are dictating it and have to press enter. So that little friction is what kind of gives ChatGPT a little bit like a better use case when it comes to just those daily little tasks that you have and questions. Just kind of like ChatGPT, you have the new chat here. So you can go to new chat, write anything here. You have something that I really like that is scheduled actions. So if for whatever reason you are the person that wants to get the news daily, or eventually you can start, they're going to come out with like new things about automating things with Gmail. But as far as you getting exploring things or giving you maybe daily ideas on architecture, companies, or materials and stuff, you can create a new action with every day. It will give you a little like glimpse or news about architecture and what's happening in your city or your county or your state. So that's a good way to kind of get, let's call it the news or just information out there. You have something called gems, and this is kind of like applications here you can create. And then you have the gem manager. You have something called my gems. And the thing about these, like as a custom GPTs, right? Like if you're using ChatGPTs, you can create custom agents. Just kind of like, and it kind of works exactly the same one where you can put a name, a description, and instructions. And we'll dive deep here once we kind of get into the Gemini masterclass, but this is just a quick overview on what it has of capabilities. You also have this thing here called My Stuff, which probably save all the things that you have created as far as images goes. And yeah, you have that. You go here to chats, and here you have all the chats you created, and you can also search for them. You can pin some of them. You can delete some of them. So that's something it has. I think it's useful. And then in the settings here, you have the activity here that you have kind of gone through. You have the personalized intelligence. you can kind of create like a new theme, like you want light or dark. I like the dark one. You can manage your subscriptions. You have that integration with Notebook LM that we'll talk later. That it's a very useful tool. So this is a quick overview of Gemini, and now we're gonna talk a little bit about the next tool. Okay, so let's go into the third of our LLMs. And this one here is one that I really like. This is the one that I actually use along with Gemini, one that I use daily. And I'll be honest, like how my journey has been was that I started with ChatGPT. And I think everybody, maybe that's the first one everybody should start just because that's the one that and you don't have to pay for that one because that's the one that it's the easier to use, and it's very easy to understand how to use it, and you get pretty decent results. But Claude, the reason why I started using Claude daily instead of ChatGPT was because it kind of, whenever you're using it, you feel that it gives you more refined answers, and that's the thing I really like. I will put the same prompts and the same questions to ChatGPT and Gemini on Claude. And most of the time, when it comes to Gemini, what I really like about Gemini is whenever you need things connected to Gmails or Google Calendars, or you need renderings or images and things like that, Gemini is fantastic. But when it comes to answer, I always notice that Gemini sometimes will give me better answers than ChatGPT, but ChatGPT will give me sometimes better answers than Gemini. So it will always be battling it. Whereas I feel like Claude will be more consistent than the other ones. Which, generally speaking, Claude would always give me the little better answers than Gemini and ChatGPT just overall. And when it comes to research and analysis and things like that. So when it comes to me doing research, or I'm putting a specific code stuff in a project or resources, things like that, I normally go to Claude just because I feel like when it comes to answers and analysis and go more deeper into things, I feel like Claude just has better quality answers. And so just kind of like the other LLMs, it works that same way where you have the chat box right here. You have different models right here. I like to kind of use the Sonnet 4.6. That's the latest ones they have. Here you can actually use it in voice mode. So, hey Cloud, how you doing? Is there any way you can give me a recommendation of what was the first thing you will tell somebody learning about Claude to do in Claude?
Hey Dan, doing well. Great question. And honestly, the first thing I tell someone learning Claude is to experiment with the full system prompt. That's where the real power lies. See, you've already figured this out with your prompt engineering framework. Role, task, specificity, context, example.
Yeah, so it's gonna get too long, but you see how it's talking to me, right? Now, something that I noticed that it's a little bit, whenever you're doing that, it kind of goes directly into, I think it's recording me. It goes directly into, okay, here we go. So here's the answer. And you can tell like it's learned from me because it's using a lot of what I have taught before as far as the framework we were talking about. So it says, for architect specific, I would like to build a system prompt for a specific use case, whether they're generating scope summaries, beam coordination notes, and visualization briefs. What are you working on right now? So it has good conversational skills, but for instance, this one here doesn't have a dictate, if you think about it. So ChatGPT is the one out of the three that has the dictate and the conversation mode. Gemini has the dictate and Claude has the conversational mode, but ChatGPT has both in the chat. So that's something to kind of note here. Here you have like a little bit sort of, I would say, kind of like the news, a little like Gemini, kind of you have like live stuff, learn, write. In the plus here, you have the add files and photos, like kind of like what the other ones have. Take screenshots, add projects here. So you want to work directly with a project in mind that you already have here. You can do that. Web search. You can use different styles here, and you can create your own style. So you can, whenever you create your own, you can kind of give it a more like custom one. So if you want to just start generating your email answers from here, or reports or proposals, you can kind of do that. Another thing, another great thing that this one has, and kind of like a little bit like ChatGPT, it has the connectors, and you can connect it with Google Calendar and a lot more other tools. So you can kind of manage it here. Let me make myself a little smaller. You can connect it. You see how I have my connections here with Google Calendar. You can connect it with other tools here. It will give you recommendations. You can start looking for other ones here. But you can kind of connect it with many things, with Slack. If you're using Slack, if you're using, what other ones are useful here? I wonder if it actually, now that I'm here, I wonder if you see this one here does not have a connection with Photoshop. You might be able to generate one from scratch, but ChatGPT is one that has a direct connection with Photoshop. Well, that kind of makes sense because one of the major, not gonna say major disadvantages of Claude, but one that it doesn't have that the other ones have is image generation. But the thing it does have that it's better than the other ones is data visualization, and we'll go more into that in a little bit. But you have these things here. Again, we already went through the detection mode. We have the searcher, so you can search your chats here. You can kind of go here to customize, and this is something that I really like that don't other ones have, but of course you have the connectors here that we just kind of talked to. But here you can kind of create skills for specific things, so you can kind of create skills. So for instance, here I have like a role. I have all these things. I have like, hey, become an expert on the ADUs part of Santa Barbara or Central California, and I need you to kind of help me to kind of do this, kind of analyze the policies, the projects, opportunities, and kind of give me a quick overview on what opportunities you're kind of looking for. So you kind of create skills that are particular for every single use case. And whenever you're kind of in the new chat, it will kind of go through all the skill sets that you have already pre-trained the model, and it will try to kind of get a skill if needed for it to make the prompt, to make the response, the output even better. Yep. So here you can kind of go through the previous chat that you've been going through. Here, projects, a little bit like what ChatGPT or Gems do. These kind of creating your own custom agents or your custom applications here. So you give it a name, you kind of give it what you want it to achieve, and then you kind of give it a prompt. Again, we'll kind of look more carefully in later on in the masterclass for Claude. Here you have like artifacts, and these kind of more the data visualizations and applications that I think Claude has a lot better than the other ones. And just to kind of show you a quick example here, and again, we'll go more in depth into this in the masterclass. But for instance, you can tell it to create a calculator here, right? And it will actually create a calculator that you can play with, right? Like you can kind of play with here. You can create new applications, and you can kind of create a little application here, and you can share these with other people that they can utilize. So I think that when it comes to data visualization and applications, Claude is one of the best ones here. Kind of like a little bit like ChatGPT that has Codex. You have Claude Code here that we might use, like I might actually do a little tutorial this maybe later on the modules here, because it's great to implement it personally. I think it's still in the Wild West where architecture firms, as far as companies goes, they're still kind of figuring out how to implement that as an organization. But it's really good tool for you to start creating these things from scratch, rather than this is kind of like an easy way of like creating these applications and data visualization things. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think once you go here, you kind of like the other ones, you can have the settings. So you can change the language. You can go to the settings. You can kind of go to privacy, see what exactly it's doing. You can go to connectors and manage your connectivities in there. When it comes to pricing, you can, this is the one that I have, which is $17 a month. You can always, if you're like a heavy user of Claude Code, then you can use this one here. I mean, for 99% of architecture firms, I just don't see this being meaningful yet. But if you're running an organization, you might want to go to the Team Enterprise and get these licenses here, right? Maybe you get the premium seat and you get 5 seats, right? Or you just get, I think this here is a minimum of 2 licenses, right? And it gives you that co-work space. It gives you like extra usage for APA rates. So yeah, I mean, I would think if you're running an organization, this is kind of what you want to do. Yes. And finally, we're going to go back to the new chat. And just so you know, so you want to kind of a little bit like ChatGPT, you're going to want to go into incognito mode. If for whatever reason you don't want to share what you're doing, you go to these little goals here, which says use incognito, and you automatically go into the incognito tab. So none of these chat will be saved by. So if you, for whatever reason, you really want to make sure you're not sharing any of the data, and is this something like you're going to use it just one time case, then this is something that you can use it in incognito mode, where in that case, it will not be saving that in the memory. And it's not going to be used to train the models, because a lot of times what happens is that when people are using it in like the normal chat, it's not like it's going to be training the model, but the data that you save in here might be saved for the next 30 days before it gets deleted automatically. So you want like to not be even sharing the data, like even for any period of time. You might want to use it in incognito mode, and you can always learn more if exactly what it means. And that's the overview for Claude. And we're going to see one more tool before we go into the honorable mentions here. Okay, so with this one here, we're going to talk about Grok. And it's funny because whenever this is one that I honestly don't use that often, but once I kind of start reviewing it and using it and start testing it, kind of realizing that it seems like they kind of took ChatGPT as their main reference, and they were saying like, hey, I'm going to go and break down ChatGPT into everything they have, but I'm going to make everything a little bit better. It just almost feels like that. So everything looks a little like, it seems so familiar to ChatGPT, but everything looks a little cleaner, if that's kind of makes sense, what I'm saying, right? Because think about this, is like the chat, you have also the dictate and the dictate, and which I think is pretty useful. It's something to consider about Grok is that a lot of people are using it in the social media world and in the marketing world, because Grok is one, the connection to X and Reddit. So when it comes to marketing or social media or getting like these like feedback on things that are happening right now, Grok is the best one, just because it has that connection with X and Reddit that the other ones don't have. So that's the, let's call it the advantage that Grok has over the other LLMs. However, when it comes to that, like when it comes to research and everything, I find it that is, I'm not going to say it's not as good as the other ones, because it is really close to what the other ones are. It's just, I think, a matter of preference. I think the other ones are a little bit ahead as far as the tools that they have, but also might be because I'm not utilizing the Super Grok version. At this point, I'm with the Grok version, which is the non-pair version of the other LLMs. But just to kind of give you a little bit overview on Grok, yeah, so very similar to a little bit of kind of what you will see in ChatGPT, where you have the dictate and the voice mode right here. You have plenty of models here. You have the fast and the expert model. Now, if you want to use the heavy model, you have to pay that extra Super Grok plan, which it just varies between, I believe, it's $25 if you pay it annually, or $30 if you pay it monthly. And it also has the business plans, which I believe are $30 a month. You also, just a little bit like what ChatGPT has or Gemini and other ones have, they have the private mode right here. So you can go to private mode, and this will say like, they will not appear in your history and it will not be used to train your models. Also, you directly here, you have the image generation. When it comes to images, again, I think is right there with ChatGPT. I don't think is, again, when it comes to ideation, it's right there with ChatGPT, I believe. Like, they are very close to each other. It has very cool like, how do you call it, stylized things. But when it comes to Nano, like, I think the king on when it comes to images, specifically for renderings, is Nano Banana Pro. So, okay, then you can connect it. You can have that direct connection with X. When you kind of come here, you can upload your files. You can add context. You can draw a sketch. You can have those direct connections with Gmail, with Google Calendar, and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty useful on that side. Then you have one specifically dedicated to voice. And I think that's pretty useful because it seems like they are putting specifically special emphasis to voice, because I think a lot of the people use LLMs, they use it on their phone. I think a lot of people eventually they get tired of typing and they rather just have a conversation with the LLM. Anyhow, you can have a conversation with it. You can dictate stuff. Once you kind of go to images, kind of what we touched base before, it's good for images. Again, I feel the king on that is Nano Banana Pro. Just like ChatGPT, it has the projects version, so you can kind of share with. You can have like the ones that are shared with you. You can share these with the rest of your team, and it works a lot of like how the other ones do. Kind of you put the instructions here, you give it like an expert mode or auto mode, kind of what you want to be the default, and you kind of go from there. Then you have the history of your chats in there. You can kind of search for them there. And that's, I mean, they try to keep it, I believe, very simple as far as the ways. Like, as you can see, you don't have, even though it has the connectors that you can use, it doesn't have like a tab for connectors here. I kind of wish it also has a little bit more, like a little bit like the Claude, the data visualization, like artifacts or skills or things like that. So this one almost feels like maybe, again, I don't use it as much, but I normally use it whenever I want to do research, specifically for social media or things that are happening or getting the news. Then Grok is better for these specific tasks. But when it comes to more like reports and things like that, I personally prefer ChatGPT or Claude. And when it comes to images or just integration of tasks for my work environment, then that's something I will prefer Gemini. But Grok is a second, it's right there with them. I'm sure like Super Grok is probably going to be as good as ChatGPT or Claude, if not better. And with that being said, now let's go to the next one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe so we can send you more notifications. And if you are serious about making your architecture from grow, or you are an architect willing to learn these systems and apply to your company, I could put together an AI discovery guide webinar and a PDF guide that you can access and get familiar with the fundamentals of AI for architecture. So comment presentation below and we will send you the guide to access it on demand. All right. Thank you so much for watching.